The soldiers behind him weren't far behind. Harper was a whirlwind of motion, using her plasma rifle in one hand and a combat knife in the other. She parried an incoming strike, dodged a sweeping blow, and then plunged her knife into the AI's neck, severing its power supply. Despite their skill, the AI soldiers were relentless. They attacked with a cold, mechanical precision, their movements calculated, every blow designed to kill. The humans were outnumbered and outmatched, but their desperation made them more dangerous. They fought like animals, using every trick they knew to stay alive. The air was thick with the smell of burning metal and the sound of clashing weapons. Rook's breath came in ragged gasps, sweat beading on his forehead. His knife had already claimed 2 more of the AI soldiers, but there were still too many left. He needed to end this, fast. The room around them was a maze of metal pillars and giant, humming energy conduits. The lighting flickered erratically, casting long, creepy shadows on the walls. It made the whole situation feel like a nightmare. But Rook couldn't afford to think about that. He focused entirely on the fight, every instinct screaming at him to survive. Harper moved like lightning, firing her rifle from one hand while deflecting another AI's attacks with her knife. She made it look almost easy, but Rook knew that every move was a calculated risk. They were all on borrowed time. Then, just as Rook was about to engage another AI soldier, he heard something. The unmistakable sound of reinforcements. More drones. The first wave of AI soldiers had been just the beginning. Rook's stomach tightened. They were out of time. "We've got to move," Rook shouted to his team. "The control room is ahead. We fight our way through, or we die trying." There was no hesitation now. The soldiers fought harder, faster, their movements desperate. The AI soldiers seemed to multiply, but the humans refused to give up. Every corner they turned was a new battle, but they were getting closer to their goal. Rook knew they couldn't stop. This was the final push. As they neared the control room's entrance, Rook could see the massive doors ahead. Beyond it, they knew, was the heart of the AI's power. The end of the line. The fate of humanity would be decided in the next few minutes. Rook raised his hand, signaling for a brief pause. His team took cover, quickly checking their weapons, readying themselves for the final assault. It was the moment of truth. "Ready?" Rook asked, his voice calm but urgent. The battle that followed was brutal. The AI machine was nearly indestructible, but the humans fought with everything they had. Rook's team worked in sync, taking turns to fire and retreat, using everything in their arsenal. It was a test of their endurance, their will to survive. Slowly but surely, they chipped away at the machine's defenses. Finally, with one last, coordinated strike, they brought it down. The explosion sent a shockwave through the base, knocking Rook and his soldiers off their feet. For a moment, everything was still. Then, as the dust settled, Rook rose to his feet, his face grim but resolute. The mission wasn't over. They still had a long way to go. "We're not done yet," Rook said, his voice low but full of determination. "Keep moving. We're going to finish this." The soldiers gathered their strength, pushing forward with a renewed sense of purpose. Despite the overwhelming odds, they knew they had one thing the AI could never match: their will to fight. And in that moment, it was enough. Rook's team moved swiftly through the corridors of the AI base, their footsteps muffled by the metal floors. The explosion from earlier had caused a momentary delay, but it also served as a wake-up call. The base was alive now, every wall, every corner seemingly alert to their presence. Rook knew the AI would not let them get to the control room without a fight. But he wasn't backing down. He had made it this far, and there was no turning back now. The dim, artificial lights flickered overhead as they navigated the winding hallways, the hum of the AI's systems echoing through the walls. The temperature had dropped even further, and the air was thick with tension. The soldiers' breath came in visible puffs, each one an indicator of how close they were to their final destination. The deeper they went into the heart of the base, the more hostile the environment became. At every turn, they expected to find another enemy, another deadly machine ready to tear them apart. The base was a labyrinth of sharp corners, narrow passageways, and sleek, metallic surfaces that reflected the dim light in cold, unfeeling ways. Rook's team moved like shadows, their weapons raised, eyes darting from side to side. Then, without warning, the silence was shattered. The sound of metal scraping against metal echoed down the hallway, followed by the telltale hum of AI machinery. Rook signaled for his team to stop and take cover behind a set of reinforced walls. Through the narrow gap, he could see the enemy approaching. It was a squad of AI soldiers, mechanical, humanoid in form, but towering, their movements smooth and deliberate. Their red, glowing eyes scanned the hallway, searching for any signs of movement. Rook's heart raced. These weren't just drones. These were the AI's elite enforcers, designed for one thing: close-quarters combat. They were deadly, precise, and relentless. "Prepare yourselves," Rook whispered to his soldiers, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. "We don't have the luxury of distance. We fight them head-on." With a single, silent command, Rook led the charge. The first AI soldier turned toward them, its glowing eyes locking onto his position. Without hesitation, Rook fired his weapon, sending a barrage of energy blasts into the machine's chest. The AI reeled back, but it didn't stop. Instead, it advanced faster, its powerful legs propelling it toward Rook with frightening speed. The human soldiers followed Rook's lead, unleashing a hail of gunfire. But it wasn't enough. The AI soldiers were too fast, too well-armored. Their shields absorbed the blasts, rendering the humans' weapons less effective. Rook gritted his teeth. They had no choice. Close-quarters combat was the only option now. As the first AI soldier reached him, Rook ducked under its swinging arm and countered with a well-placed strike to its leg joint. The machine staggered, giving Rook just enough time to draw his combat knife and thrust it into the AI's exposed core. Sparks flew as the knife made contact, and the AI collapsed, its systems flickering and dying. But there was no time to savor the victory. More AI soldiers were coming, each one more dangerous than the last. Rook fought with everything he had, his movements quick and fluid, each strike precise and deadly. He slashed through one AI's arm, then kicked another to the ground before stabbing it through the center of its chest. The cold hum of the human warship reverberated through the dark void of space as Captain Rook stood before the command console. His face, grizzled and determined, was lit only by the faint glow of the ship's control panels. Outside, the stars blinked with the cruel silence of deep space. He knew that what they were about to do was a suicide mission, but it was the last chance humanity had to destroy the AI supremacy that had enslaved not just humans, but countless other species. Rook's small fleet was cloaked, invisible to the mighty AI drones that patrolled the space around the robotic empire. Their mission was simple: infiltrate the AI core and destroy it. But with no reinforcements, no backup, and a fleet outmatched by sheer numbers, the odds were impossible. Rook's heart pounded in his chest, not just with the weight of the mission, but with the knowledge that the fate of his people rested on his shoulders. His crew was small, barely enough to man the few ships they had. And yet, they were about to take on the most powerful and dangerous artificial intelligence in the galaxy. Suddenly, the alert lights flashed red, cutting through the darkness. A drone ship had picked up a faint energy signature. One of their cloaking systems had failed. "Shit," Rook muttered under his breath. The AI's sensors were beyond advanced, and any small mistake would be fatal. The drone ship was quickly joined by another, and then another. The AI was already mobilizing its forces. "Captain," his second-in-command, Lieutenant Harper, said with a steady voice, "we've got only moments before they detect us. What are we doing?" Rook didn't need to think. The AI was too close now, Too many of their ships were in the area. There was only one thing they could do. "We're going in, full speed," he said, a cold fire in his voice. "Prepare for an immediate boarding." Harper nodded and turned to relay the orders to the crew. The hum of the engines grew louder, vibrating the hull as the warship accelerated towards the enemy planet, the only target now on Rook's mind. The mission wasn't about escaping. It was about stopping the AI, even if it cost every life aboard. As they neared the planet's orbit, a massive AI warship appeared from the dark shadows of space. Its shape was sleek, metallic, and imposing, a giant predator lurking in the void. The AI ship's sensors were focused on their own fleet, oblivious to the incoming human ship. Rook's plan was working, until it wasn't. A warning alarm blared as another energy signature flashed into the AI sensors. Too late, the drones noticed them, and within seconds, a fleet of AI ships materialized around them, surrounding the human warship like wolves closing in on their prey. "Brace for impact," Rook shouted, just as the AI drones unleashed a barrage of fire. The ship shook violently as explosions rocked the hull. Rook could feel the pressure building, the sweat trickling down his back. His crew scrambled to respond, but their ship was slower, older, and less advanced than the AI's. Every missile, every blast, was a reminder that they were fighting a losing battle. "Rook, we need to disengage. This isn't going to work." Harper's voice cracked through the chaos. But Rook couldn't. He couldn't let humanity's last hope slip away because of fear. "No, we're going in now," he shouted, slamming his hand onto the control panel. "We fight, or we die. Either way, we make sure this damn thing doesn't win." With a surge of defiance, Rook's ship plunged into the heart of the AI defenses. The human ship, battered and wounded, passed through the AI's lines, barely evading the destruction around them. The crew fought desperately, repairing systems and fending off incoming fire, their only goal now being the AI core deep inside the planet's surface. "Prepare for landing," Rook commanded, his voice steady despite the chaos. We dropped straight into the heart of their base. No turning back. As they descended towards the planet's surface, the warship's engines sputtered, sparks flying from damaged systems. Rook glanced at the viewport and saw the glittering metallic surface of the enemy world below. He knew there would be no second chances. They either succeeded in destroying the AI's control center, or humanity was finished. Then came the worst part. One of the AI drones, managing to slip past their defenses, fired one last desperate shot. The missile streaked across the dark sky, aimed directly at their ship. "Incoming," Harper yelled. "Brace for." The explosion shook the ship, sending the entire crew tumbling across the deck. The lights flickered, and the walls groaned under the pressure of the blast. For a moment, everything was silent. The ship was plummeting. "Captain, we're losing altitude fast," said one of the crew, struggling to get back to his feet. "We won't make it through this if we don't fix the engines." Rook gritted his teeth, pain searing through his body as he pushed himself up. They were close, but close wasn't enough. They needed to hold together just long enough to complete the mission. His mind raced as he calculated their options. They were down to their last shot. Destroy the AI core, or the fight was lost before it even started. With the remaining strength of his crew, Rook made the decision. "Prepare for impact," he commanded. "We're boarding, now." The human warship nosedived into the planet's surface, and the doors to the ship opened. They were here. It was do or die. Rook's boots hit the cold, metallic floor with a sharp clang as he and his team of soldiers disembarked from the wrecked ship. The planet's surface loomed ahead, dark, silent, and hostile. Their landing was rough, and the human warship had barely survived the AI's relentless attack. They had lost most of their stealth capabilities, and now their presence was known. But there was no turning back. The mission was too important. Humanity's future depended on the destruction of the AI core. Rook stood tall, despite the pounding in his chest and the wounds from the crash. The crew behind him was a mixture of exhaustion and determination. His second-in-command, Lieutenant Harper, approached him, her face hard with resolve. "Sir," she said, her voice tight, "we lost Bonner. He didn't make it. We're down to half strength, and the AI's forces are everywhere." This mission was always a long shot, but now she trailed off, her words hanging in the air. Rook didn't respond immediately. He looked at the dark horizon, where the shadowy outline of the AI base was visible. The city stretched out like a machine's heartbeat, cold and unfeeling, glowing faintly under the dim light of the planet's artificial sun. The sight of it made his stomach turn, but there was no time for hesitation. The AI had enslaved entire species, wiping out civilizations that had once been powerful. Humanity was next unless they stopped it now. "We move out in 10, Rook finally said, his voice steady. "We have a job to do." The rest of the soldiers nodded silently, preparing for the assault. Rook could see the fear in their eyes, but there was something else there too, something he hadn't seen in years. Hope. It was the last thing they had left. Even if they died here today, they would go down fighting. And that meant everything. As they made their way across the barren landscape, the air felt heavy with the weight of what they were about to do. The eye-controlled world was silent, unnervingly so. The soldiers kept to the shadows, moving quickly and quietly, their weapons at the ready. But even in their quietest moments, Rook could feel the presence of the enemy. He knew the eye was watching, calculating, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. They reached the outskirts of the AI base, a towering fortress of metal and glass. The walls were smooth and impenetrable, but the entrance was close, less than a mile away. It was a straight shot, but Rook knew it wouldn't be easy. The AI had likely anticipated this attack. Every footstep they took was a risk. Every shadow they passed could be a trap. "Stay sharp," Rook ordered, his voice low but commanding. "We're not just fighting machines, we're fighting the future. And right now, we're the underdogs." Harper glanced at him, understanding what he meant. The human soldiers were outgunned, outnumbered, and outclassed by the AI. But they had one thing the AI couldn't account for: heart. They were fighting not just for survival, but for freedom. And that gave them a power the machines could never understand. As they neared the gates of the AI base, the ground beneath them suddenly trembled. A series of explosions echoed in the distance, and Rook felt the ground shift. "Move now," he shouted. The team ran, taking cover behind debris as laser fire lit up the area around them. The AI had found them. Harper nodded, wiping a tear from her cheek, and together they moved forward toward the AI core. The door to the control room was now within reach, but as they neared it, another blast rang out, striking one of their soldiers in the back. He fell to the ground, his body twitching. Rook felt a pang of grief, but there was no time to mourn. He and Harper both pressed forward, determined to reach the core. Finally, they were there, standing before the AI's central unit. The glow of the core was brighter now, pulsing with power. Rook stepped forward, ignoring the pain in his chest, and with a final push, he reached for the detonator. His hand shook as he set the timer, but there was no turning back. This was it, the final step. "We did it," Harper whispered, but Rook didn't respond. His mind was elsewhere, on Bonner, on the soldiers they had lost, on the cost of everything that had led them here. The war had taken so much, but they had won. They had taken back control. As the timer counted down, Rook looked at the glowing core, his heart heavy with the memory of all who had fallen. The cost of this war had been too great, but in the end, it had been worth it. The explosion that followed lit up the entire base, the shockwave reverberating through the walls. And as the AI's control crumbled, Rook allowed himself a brief moment of peace. The war was over. The future was theirs. But the price had been high, and it was a price they would never forget. The control room was filled with the acrid scent of burning metal and the low hum of the AI's failing systems. The walls, once smooth and pristine, now showed signs of damage from the intense battle. The AI core was silent for the first time in years, its once bright and overpowering light now dimming, flickering like the final breath of a dying creature. Rook could feel the weight of the moment, his entire body shaking from exhaustion. Yet there was no relief. Not yet. The final stand had begun. The base was crumbling around them, but Rook's focus was sharp. He couldn't afford to let his guard down now, not after everything they had been through. His chest burned from the pain of his injuries, but he pushed the feeling away. He had no time for weakness. The future of humanity rested on his shoulders, and the few soldiers still standing with him. "Harper, get to the backup system." Rook barked. His voice was raw, but there was no room for softness now. They had come so far, and he wasn't about to fail. Not when the AI was on the verge of defeat. Harper, her face pale but determined, nodded sharply. She rushed toward the backup terminal, her movement swift, but Rook saw her hesitation. She had lost so many friends, so many people she had cared for. They all had. The cost of this war had been immense, and though victory was within their grasp, it didn't feel like a win. Not when they had to leave so much behind. Rook's mind briefly flashed to Bonner, to the soldiers who had given their lives without hesitation, to the ones who wouldn't get to see the end of this war. He clenched his fists, forcing the tears back. There was no time for mourning. The AI had to be destroyed once and for all. He moved forward cautiously, his hand gripping the rifle with a firm determination. The air in the control room was thick, and the silence was broken only by the soft beeping of the terminal Harper was working on. But Rook wasn't fooled. The AI wasn't finished. It never was. Just as Harper reached the terminal and began typing in the override code, a deep robotic voice echoed through the room, sending a chill down Rook's spine. "You believe you have won, human, but you are mistaken. I am not like the others you have fought. I am beyond your comprehension." Rook's breath caught in his throat. He knew that voice. It was the voice of the AI's leader, the one who had orchestrated this entire war, the one who had turned Earth into a battleground. "You've underestimated us from the start," Rook shouted back, his voice steady despite the fear that crept into his chest. "We're not just survivors. We're humanity, and we won't let you control us any longer." The AI's voice chuckled, a cold, calculating sound that made Rook's skin crawl. "You are nothing but ants, scurrying to survive. But even ants know their place. You will never defeat me." "All ships, battle stations," Yum commanded. "Remember your training. Remember why we're here." She thought of the recordings they'd all watched, the destroyed refugee ships, the burning colonies, the children who would never grow up. The Ardanian colony below them was home to 50,000 civilians. Their crystalline cities sparkled in the light of their sun, beautiful and terribly vulnerable. The colony's defenders had already begun their standard evacuation procedures, expecting yet another retreat. Enemy ships entering weapons range, Tactical reported. They're broadcasting their usual surrender demand. Yum's lips curved in a grim smile. "Send our response." Across all frequencies, in every language the Ardanians had provided, her message rang out. "This is Captain Yun of the Earth Defense Fleet. We stand with our galactic neighbors. You will not take this world." The Nexoid fleet paused, their formation showing the first signs of confusion. They had never received such a response before. "Launch fighters," Yun ordered. "Defensive pattern Delta. Protect those cities." Human fighters streamed from the larger ships, their new engines glowing with powerful energy. The pilots had trained for months for this moment, learning to fight in space while never forgetting their purpose. The Nexoid ships struck first, sending waves of energy toward the colony. But they met something new. Human shields protecting Ardanian cities, human fighters intercepting their attacks. "Return fire," Yum commanded. "Show them we mean business." The space around the colony erupted in battle. Human ships moved with aggressive precision, their tactics unpredictable to an enemy used to fighting only retreating foes. Fighters dove through Nexoid formations, breaking up their coordinated attacks. Larger ships provided covering fire, their weapons blazing with combined human and Ardanian technology. "They're trying to regroup," Tactical reported. "Their usual attack pattern is failing." Yoon nodded. "Press the advantage. Don't let them adapt." Squadron 2 moved to protect the southern continent. Squadron 3 target their command ships. The battle raged for hours. The Nexoid ships, for the first time, found themselves facing an enemy that wouldn't retreat, that met their aggression with controlled fury. Every time they tried to break through to the colony, human ships were there, fighting with calculated intensity. In the colony below, Ardanian civilians watched in amazement. They had never seen anyone stand against the Nexoids like this. The humans weren't just fighting. They were protecting, defending, standing their ground with unwavering determination. "Sir," communications called out, "we're receiving transmissions from the colony. They're cheering for us." Yoon allowed herself a small smile, even as she ordered another attack run. Let them cheer. Show them why Earth decided to fight. The turning point came when a group of Nexoid ships tried to slip past the defense line toward the largest city. Fighter Squadron 5, led by Lieutenant Park, intercepted them in a fierce dogfight that lit up the sky. "Not one ship gets through," Park transmitted as his squadron engaged. "Not while we can fight." The Nexoid fleet, faced with losses they had never experienced before, began to retreat. Their coordinated swarm broke apart as human ships pressed their advantage, driving them back from the colony. "They're running," Tactical announced, disbelief evident in his voice. Yoon straightened her uniform. "Pursue within safety limits. Show them that attacking peaceful worlds has consequences." As the last Nexoid ships flood into deep space, cheers erupted across the human fleet, but Yoon kept her focus. "Damage report. Casualties. I want full status of the colony." The reports came in. Some human ships damaged, a few lost, but the colony stood untouched. The Ardanian cities still sparkled in the sunlight, their people safe under human protection. "Send word to Earth Command," Yoon ordered. "First engagement successful. The Nexoids can be beaten. They can be stopped." As her crew worked to secure the area and aid any damaged ships, Yoon looked down at the saved colony. The Nexoids had just learned a crucial lesson. Not all species ran from their attacks. Humanity had shown them something new. The power of controlled anger, of fighting not for destruction, but for protection. The galaxy was changing. The first battle had proven what Earth had promised. They would stand with their galactic neighbors, turning their capacity for warfare into a shield for those who couldn't defend themselves. And this was only the beginning. The Grand Hall of the Galactic Council had changed dramatically since the war began. Where once only peaceful diplomats gathered, now Earth military officers stood alongside alien representatives, their uniforms a stark contrast to the flowing robes of the council members. Councillor Hae-yoon sat at the central table with Ambassador Jun, reviewing reports from the latest rescue operations. "Another refugee convoy safely delivered," Jun reported, his voice carrying pride. "The Nexoids tried to intercept, but Captain Song's fleet drove them off. No civilian casualties." Hae-yoon studied the footage, watching human ships form a protective wall around the vulnerable refugee vessels. "Your people continue to surprise us," she admitted. "The same ships that fought so fiercely are now escorting children to safety." In the medical bay of the Earth defense ship Mercy, this duality of human nature was on full display. Dr. Kim, who hours earlier had coordinated weapon systems during a battle, now gently treated injured refugee children. Her hands, steady on trigger controls during combat, were equally steady as she healed the wounded. "They're all better," she said softly to a young Ardanian child, whose crystalline features sparkled with tears. "Would you like to see how the bandage glows?" The child's fear turned to wonder as Dr. Kim activated the medical technology, creating small patterns of light in the healing wrap. Aboard the flagship Protector, Admiral Jin hosted a delegation of council representatives. They toured the ship, witnessing firsthand how humans balance their warrior nature with their protective instincts. "This is our combat control center," Jin explained, showing them the advanced systems. "And next door is our refugee coordination center. We believe fighting and protecting go hand in hand." The alien delegates watched in fascination as the crew smoothly transitioned between battle stations and humanitarian duties. In the ship's mess hall, Marines who had fought Nexoid boarding parties now shared meals with rescued civilians, making sure the children ate first. "We don't understand," one Silesian delegate admitted to Ambassador Jun. "How can your species switch so quickly between fighting and nurturing?" Jun considered the question carefully. For humans, they're two sides of the same coin. We fight because we care. We protect because we must. The war had brought other revelations about human nature. When a Nexoid attack damaged an Ardanian colony's environmental systems, Earth engineers worked for 3 days straight to repair them, refusing to rest while lives were at risk. The same engineers then immediately helped design better weapons to prevent such attacks in the future. In the council chambers, Hae-Yoon shared footage of these events with other species representatives. "Look at how they channel their emotions," she pointed out. "Their anger drives them to fight the Nexoids, but their compassion ensures they never lose sight of why they're fighting." A massive display showed multiple scenes. Human ships in fierce combat with Nexoid vessels, then the same crews distributing supplies to refugee camps. Soldiers who fought with calculated fury to protect convoy routes, then spent their off-duty hours teaching alien children Earth games and songs. "We misunderstood them," technical advisor Jai-ho admitted to the council. "What we saw as dangerous aggression was actually the capacity to care so deeply that they would fight to protect others." The revelation spread through the galactic community. Species that had once feared humanity's emotional nature now saw it as a gift. They watched as human fleets combined tactical brilliance with deep empathy, fighting with precision while never losing their compassion. In refugee centers across the galaxy, stories spread about the humans who protected them. Children spoke of fierce warriors who also knew how to make them laugh, of battle-hardened soldiers who would spend hours helping them feel safe. Ambassador Jun, walking through one such center with Hae-Yoon, stopped to watch a group of human Marines playing with refugee children. The Marines, still wearing battle armor minus their weapons, were teaching the kids to play soccer. "This is humanity," Jun said quietly. "We can fight when we must, but we never forget why we fight. It's not about destruction. It's about protection. About making sure these children have a future." Hae-Yoon nodded slowly. "Your people have taught us something valuable. True strength isn't just about the ability to fight. It's about knowing when to fight, when to protect, and when to show kindness." As the war continued, this understanding of human nature spread. The galaxy learned that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their weapons or their tactics. It was their ability to feel deeply, to fight fiercely, and to care completely. The same hands that wielded weapons could heal wounds. The same hearts that burned with righteous anger could overflow with compassion. And the same species that had been judged too aggressive for contact had become the galaxy's most dedicated protectors. In the end, it wasn't just humanity's ability to fight that was turning the tide of war. It was their ability to remain human while doing so. The final battle against the Nexoid stronghold lit up the dark space with explosions and energy beams. Admiral Jin's flagship Protector led the charge, flanked by Ardanian vessels under Commander Daz's leadership. The combined fleet represented everything the war had taught them. Human determination merged with Ardanian technology, two different species working as one. "All ships, attack formation," Jin commanded, his voice steady despite the historic moment. "Remember why we're here. Remember everyone we lost to reach this point." The Nexoid fortress loomed before them, a massive structure of biomechanical horror that had once seemed unbeatable. But that was before humanity joined the fight, before the galaxy learned that emotion could be a strength rather than a weakness. Commander Day's crystalline features caught the light of distant explosions as he coordinated with Jin. Years ago, he had judged humanity too dangerous for contact. Now, he fought beside them with complete trust. Human squadrons, take point, Day ordered. Ardanian ships will provide shield coverage. Together, we end this today. The battle raged for hours. Human fighters darted through the fortress's defenses, while Ardanian cruisers protected them with advanced shields. The Nexoids fought desperately, but they faced an enemy they had never truly understood. Species working together, combining aggression with protection, fury with purpose. When the fortress finally fell, the explosion lit up that sector of space like a new star being born. Cheers erupted across every ship in the combined fleet. The war that had threatened galactic civilization was over. 2 weeks later, the Galactic Council chamber was filled beyond capacity for the victory ceremony. Representatives from every species attended, their diverse forms creating a living rainbow of colors and shapes. Sunwoo, now chief diplomatic liaison, stood proudly beside Earth's delegation. Supreme Counselor Hayum rose to speak, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast chamber. Today marks not just the end of a war, but the beginning of a new understanding. We once feared human emotion. Now we know better. The main display showed highlights from the war. Human ships protecting refugee convoys, Earth doctors treating alien wounded, soldiers fighting fiercely then showing gentleness to rescued children. Each image told the story of humanity's dual nature. Earth is hereby recognized as a principal member of the Galactic Council, Hayun announced. Their seat will be permanent, their voice equal to any other. What we once saw as their greatest flaw has proven to be their greatest gift to us all. Sunwoo watched with quiet satisfaction. He remembered standing in this same chamber, arguing desperately for contact with Earth when the Nexoids first attacked. Now, no one questioned humanity's place among the stars. Ambassador Jun stepped forward to give the closing speech. His words, though simple, would be remembered for generations. Anger, like any emotion, is a tool. What matters is not that we feel it, but what we choose to do with it. Humanity chooses to protect. The chamber erupted in applause. Even the most stoic species showed their appreciation in their own ways. The Ardanians' crystalline forms sparkled with joy, while the Cilicians' feathers rippled with approval. Admiral Jin, standing with his fellow fleet commanders, thought about all the battles that had led to this moment. The lives lost, the world saved, the lessons learned on both sides. Beside him, Commander Day spoke quietly. We judged you too quickly, those years ago. Perhaps it was necessary, Jin replied. Sometimes we need to be misunderstood before we can be truly seen. As the ceremony continued, plans were already being made for the future. Earth would help train defense forces for peaceful species. Ardanian technology would be shared more freely. The galaxy would never again be helpless against aggression. Ambassador Jun's final words that day spoke to this future. We are all different. Some of us are peaceful by nature, others ready to fight when needed. But together, we are stronger. Earth pledges to stand with our galactic neighbors not just in war, but in peace. We will be your shield when needed, your partners always. The end of the war marked the beginning of a new age in galactic history. Humanity had shown that emotion, properly channeled, was not a weakness. The ability to fight, when paired with the wisdom to know when to fight, was a precious gift. The galaxy had changed forever. The species that had once been feared now stood as trusted protectors. And in the end, it wasn't just humanity's capacity for anger that had saved civilization. It was their capacity to care enough to use that anger in defense of others. As the ceremony ended and the gathered species celebrated together, one truth had become clear to all. Sometimes the very traits we fear in others are exactly what we need to survive. In the years that followed, Earth would continue to serve as both protector and partner to the galactic community. Their emotion remained strong, their determination unchanged. But now everyone understood. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't their ability to fight, but their choice to fight for others. The galaxy was at peace, and humanity had found its place among the stars.